As lawmakers prepare to vote on the debt ceiling deal today, another government group is taking a different approach to the nation's debt problem. The National Association of Government Employees is actually suing the Biden administration over the debt ceiling, saying it is unconstitutional. The crux of the case lies around a clause in the 14th Amendment and the nation's obligation to pay its debts. Members of the workers' union say that if the country defaulted and the president had to choose what programs to cut, he would actually be violating Congress's ability to control and regulate spending. So here now to discuss the validity of that case and how it relates to the debt ceiling is Ronald Chapman, constitutional attorney and federal defense lawyer. Ronald, thank you so much for being here. Is this lawsuit particularly unique or surprising in any way?
Well, it's incredibly unique, Lindsay. This hasn't come up as an issue since 1935 when the Supreme Court decided Perry versus United States. And that was really the only time that we can see in history that the 14th Amendment has been brought up in this context with respect to debts. So it's going to be a case of new impression or first impression for the district court. And as it trickles up to the appellate court and potentially the Supreme Court, there's going to be a lot of new ground to cover here.
So does the union have a strong case, or is it more symbolic in gesture?
I think it's more symbolic. And let's talk about how this case would work. First, it's filed in the district court and a motion to dismiss would be argued. If the case was dismissed, it would then get appealed. If it wasn't dismissed and there was a ruling granted, it would also get appealed. And the goal of this case is to get up to the Supreme Court to determine whether or not the 14th Amendment or the debt ceiling would be considered a valid exercise under the 14th Amendment. And I have my concerns about this case, the standing of the group that's filing it, as well as the timeliness of the case. But ultimately, I don't believe that the legislature is going to let this get all the way to the court. And I don't think the Supreme Court is going to decide this case on its merit.
So can we talk a little bit more about the clause itself? Why was it originally included in the amendment in the first place?
Most of us think of the 14th Amendment with respect to the Privileges and Immunities Clause or the phrase, pursuit of life, liberty, and property, which is sort of common on the American lexicon. But what's really important about this clause, Clause 4, is that it was enacted after the Civil War by the Union in order to force the South to pay the debts of the Union. In fact, the actual phrase in the original version of this clause required the payment of civil debts. It was later modified in order to require other states to honor the debts of the United States in total. And then, of course, since 1917, we've seen debt ceiling legislation that has come through, and it really hasn't been challenged yet.
So President Biden did say earlier this month that he would explore invoking the 14th Amendment to really challenge this constitutionality of the debt limit in the future. Do you think that's something that would actually happen, that the president would actually have to do? And if he did do it, how successful would it be?
Well, I think that's more talk than anything. I highly doubt that the president would take that measure, first because it causes uncertainty. It causes this case to go to the Supreme Court, and we know that the current conservative composition of the court may lean in favor of stripping the president of his powers, which they've traditionally done. So the case may not go in his favor, and I don't think he has a guarantee that it would. The other thing is the Supreme Court doesn't want to be in a position to cause the nation to default on its debts. And one thing we know about the John Roberts Supreme Court is that they like to proceed on a minimalist approach, deciding cases with the minimal impact to the country that they possibly can, and avoiding cases that they essentially don't want to decide. So with all due respect to President Biden and the Supreme Court, I don't think this case would be best decided at that level. I think negotiation and a deal is the best way to resolve this.
Well, we will see what happens today. Constitutional attorney and federal defense lawyer Ronald Chapman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you.